Good morning, or I should say, good day eve, wherever you're from in the world. How am I coming in? Can you hear me? All right. Thank you very much, Demi. Jens, have you been reading ahead? You've been reading the material ahead of the lesson. Very good. All right, so we still have a minute or so. We'll give it a minute or two, and we'll get started. Okay, friends, I think we can get started. Um, so, welcome to all Dhamma friends all over the world. And today we're going to start out with our guided meditation. Then we're going to do some talk and then Q&A. Hello, Aya. Good to see you. And hello, everybody. Some names I noticed and some names are brand new to me. So welcome, everybody. So let's do our guided meditation to start out. Start out by closing your eyes and taking some time to set your body up in a comfortable and stable position. We do this for two reasons. The first being that this allows us to sit in comfort, but also when you have a stable and comfortable position with your body in its proper posture, you have much more free and easy breathing. So let's take some time this morning to scan through the body to set ourselves up in a good position. We'll start from the tips of our toes and move up to the top of our heads. Start with bringing your awareness to whatever feeling you can at the toes. Sometimes it may help to wiggle your toes to really connect with that feeling. Or sometimes you may need to prompt yourself by asking yourself, what do I see? What do I feel? Bring your awareness now to the whole of your feet. What is the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor? If you're sitting cross-legged, the feeling of the feet with the thighs resting on them, or however the feet are positioned. Bring your awareness and attention to that feeling. As we go through the body and you bring your attention and awareness to each part and check in with the feeling, that is the time to adjust as needed. If you notice any kind of small feelings of discomfort or pain, now is the time to adjust your body, because something small and barely noticeable now can turn into something very noticeable and painful 20 minutes from now. So scan and adjust as needed. Bring your awareness up through the ankles and into the calves. What is the feeling of your calves resting against a cushion or the back of a chair? Investigate your calves. and adjust as needed. Bring your awareness now up through the knees. The knees are a very important aspect if you're sitting on a cushion. You want the knees to be supported and not hanging if possible. The knees hanging can cause pain. Observe any feeling in your knees and observe if they are in a stable and comfortable position. Now bring your awareness into your thighs. Connect with whatever feeling you observe there. Thighs pressing against the chair or the cushion. Make your adjustments as needed. Now bring your awareness into the hips, pelvis. The lower body acts as a foundation for the upper body. So we want to make sure that the lower body is in a stable and comfortable position. Just as if you're building a house or a pyramid or whatever building, you want a strong foundation that supports what comes above it. If you're on a cushion, check to make sure that the buttocks, the sits bones are evenly distributed on the cushion. Make your final adjustments to the lower body. When you're ready and have set your lower body in that stable and comfortable position, move up into the abdomen and the chest. Check to see that your upper body is not slouching backwards or forwards. What you want to check with your upper body is that your spine is in its natural, neutral position. You're not stretching or leaning in any way. Setting up your lower body properly will assist greatly in that endeavor. Bring your awareness to your shoulders. Make sure they're hanging loosely, not tight and scrunched up. And bring your awareness down your arms to your elbows and your hands. Make sure that your elbows and your hands are in a position that is comfortable and helps with the stability of the upper body. If they're too far forward, you may find that you lean forward. If they're really tight in, you may find that you'll lean backwards. But play with the balance of your upper body there. And when you're ready, finally bring your awareness to your head. Just like the upper body rests on the foundation of the lower body, so too does the head rest on the foundation of the upper body. So check to see that your head is not leaning too far forwards or backwards, left or right. Try to see if you can have your chin be parallel with the ground. You can tuck your chin in a little bit. What you don't want to do is use your head to stretch out your spine. So be aware of that. And when you've set your body up in that comfortable and stable position, it should be a very easy and gentle transition to following the breath. Take 3 deep, silent breaths. And let the breath go. From here on in, we do not want to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. Doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply investigate the breath, like a scientist investigates something under a microscope. Observe this body breathing in and breathing out. As you're following your breath, you may feel most prominently the air going in and out of the nostrils. If so, you can place your awareness at the tip of your nose, where that air is going in and out. You may feel most prominently the rise and fall of the chest. You can place your awareness there. Or you can simply abide with the basic awareness and understanding of this body breathing in and breathing out. While following your breath, you will get distracted. The mind will go away to the past and the future, across the world and the universe. That is normal. You didn't fail or do anything wrong. It is simply the mind showing you how it works, showing you its craving. Whenever you get distracted away, first acknowledge that you've become distracted from your breath. Come to an awareness and a mindfulness that you've been taken away. Then practice letting go and return to the breath. When we practice letting go, this means that we don't try to get angry at the distraction and push it away, nor do we become enticed by it and get wrapped up in it and continue thinking about it. We simply want to give it no attention, no energy, to let it be. And when you do so, you'll see that many things arise in the mind, persist for a time, and then cease. Like a flowing river of thoughts and activities. Let them flow by while you follow the breath. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Over and over. As you're following your breath, every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more tranquil and peaceful or not? As your mind becomes more tranquil and peaceful, you may begin to observe further details of the breath. You may notice that sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. As you're investigating the breath, see if you can observe these changes. How the breath ebbs and flows and changes over time. Pay attention to these and investigate them. After sitting for some time, check in with your posture. Notice if you've begun to slump. The balance has begun to fall apart. And you need to mindfully and slowly adjust, small adjustments to bring back to balance and stability. Slowly open your eyes and begin to spread your awareness back to what's happening around you and the totality of your body. Come back to the live stream. Okay, friends. So now that we're nice and calm, or maybe some of us are nice and calm, we can talk about a very hard subject: living with uncertainty. Now, they say that we live in uncertain times. Even, Buddhist Insights put in the little blurb for this: we live in uncertain times. The problem with that is that it's false. We tend to, when we see our society as a people, especially in the first world, we have, through our technology and our effort and all kinds of things, set up a world where we can minimize a lot of the uncertainty that our ancestors had to deal with, right? Or even people living right now in various places in the world, right? For instance, we can make sure that we can log on, wake up in the morning and log on our computers, and we have internet. We have lights. We can flip a switch and we have lights. There's many things that have become certain, almost as certain as our view that the sun will rise in the morning, right? So we've kind of fooled ourselves into a complacency of certainty. We have this feeling that, yes, of course, I'll live until at least 90s. Of course, my job is secure. Of course, my spouse still loves me. Of course, all of these things, right? So we have this kind of ignorance to reality, right? The truth is that we live in, from the second that we're born to the second we die, we are immersed in uncertainty everywhere around us. Everything, every second of the day is uncertain. So as a practitioner, when you become a meditator, you become a Buddhist, you follow the Noble Eightfold Path, part of that path is actually becoming comfortable with being bathed in uncertainty all hours of the day and night, right? We literally, it's like we're swimming in an ocean of uncertainty. Now, of course, that can be a very anxiety-filled thing, right? One of the reasons why we build the societies and we try to minimize uncertainty is because uncertainty brings up anxiety in us. Fear of the future, right? It's so uncertain. We want things to be certain. We want things to be a certain way. We want to be able to feel like we have control over things. When in reality, we have control over very little. Right? One of my favorite Buddhist memes, Buddhist pictures, is this monk meditating serenely in this little island in the lake, and it says, "Relax, nothing is under control." Right? We expect our politicians and our governments and our leaders, and we expect our bosses and people, everything. We expect that people will have things under control. Even we expect that we are supposed to have things under control, right? But the truth is, nobody really has it that much under control, right? Because everything is uncertain. This is a good time to bring up, of course, we've heard the word impermanence, right? Impermanence, impermanence, impermanence. It kind of has become like a buzzword. It's like, oh, everything's impermanent, man. Yeah. And we even we have an intellectual understanding of impermanence. Yeah, of course, people grow old and things happen and everything's uncertain. And we kind of, we have this intellectual, very shallow understanding of this word. So one of the things that was greatly impactful for me was, if when you hear a translation into English, especially when it comes to the ancient Pali, that translation is chosen among actually many different ways that you can translate a word, many different contexts, right? That translator has decided to translate this word in a certain way. And sometimes when you see the other meaning of the word, it becomes so impactful, it clicks. And this is what happened to me in terms of the Pali word anicca. This is the word where this is the Pali word where you get impermanence from. And so if you look up the Pali word, if you look it up in the dictionary, the Pali English dictionary, actually, obviously you can't go to dictionary.com and find what a Pali word is. If you look it up in the Pali English dictionary, you see, of course, the first word is impermanence, right? The second word, though, which to me is more impactful and which I think in many ways fits in with what the Buddha is trying to say with the word anicca than the word impermanent, is unstable, right? So in the Pali, oftentimes when an A is in front of a word, it's a negation of it. So nicca would be permanent, stable, dependable. Anicca is impermanent, unstable, undependable. So what does the Buddha say? Buddha says that all conditioned things are unstable. All conditioned things are not dependable. All conditioned things are impermanent. Okay? And what else does the Buddha say? Everything is conditioned except for one thing: nibbana, nirvana, awakening, right? So we live in a world, we live in existence where everything is conditioned. And what is anicca? Everything is unstable. Okay? Everything is undependable. Is your body dependable? Right? If those of you who are older, you already know you already know the answer to that. If you're younger, it's maybe harder to see because you feel strong and invincible and healthy and all these things. No, your body's not dependable. Right? Is your car dependable? No, of course not. Over time it breaks down and issues, especially if you don't take care of it correctly, right? Is your spouse dependable? Will you always be in love with this spouse? Will they always be in love with you? Will they always be living? No, right? Is your job dependable? A lot of people are finding out due to this crisis that no, it's not, is it? Right? So we live in a world where there is literally nothing that is stable and dependable. It's a hard fact to swallow. It's something that we don't want to think about, right? Because so we build up our society and we build up our mentality and we try to control and manipulate things so that they seem to be some kind of stable. Right? And things might, oftentimes when we think about impermanence, a lot of teachers and a lot of kind of modern things, they talk about like every single second of the millisecond things are changing and stuff like that. And that's true on many levels, but the Buddha also talks about things arise, they persist for a time with alteration, and then they cease. So they persist for a time with alteration. So that time could be for a human body, it could be 80 years, but they're changing, right? What, I'm 42 almost, in a week or so, I'm going to be 42. So 41 some odd years ago, I was like this small, right? And now I'm like this. And then as I get older, if I live another 40 years, I'm going to start to be like this, right? The universe too, everything has this cycle of arising, persisting for a time with alteration and ceasing. So things might persist for a long time, but eventually they cease, right? So this is a basic part of the nature of reality, that things change. Things are unstable. Things are undependable. When I first read this definition, and I had this this kind of insight, this eureka moment of insight into anicca, I had this kind of vision. I had this visual come to me where it was like I was a shipwreck survivor, like in the middle of a storm and a ship breaks down, and I'm in the water and I'm desperately trying to grasp onto flotsam, various pieces of the ship, wood and whatever, desperately trying to grasp onto them and push myself up out of the water, right? And every time I do that, every time I depend on something and push on and put my weight on it, it breaks and I fall back into the water. Right? And I kept doing that, and I kept doing that, and I kept doing that. And everything that I tried to put some kind of a foundation on, a basis on, to bring myself up, would break, would fall apart under me, because it was all undependable. It was all unstable. Right? And then I had the realization that, well, what do? I can only let go. And, this is, again, it's something that's really hard to swallow. But it's funny, we talk about in Buddhism going for refuge, right? With that visual, what this insight that I had into anicca, what showed me was that there was no refuge. And so right after that, I had the good laugh of understanding that when we go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we go for refuge to the fact that there's no refuge. There's no refuge in conditioned things in this world. Right? The only refuge to the Buddha is to become awakened, to end the cycle of samsara. So while we're in this cycle of samsara, while we are alive, while we have this body, we have these uncertainties, right? We live in this world that's completely conditioned, completely unstable, completely undependable. At least in the long term. Things might be dependable for a time. Your body's dependable while you're young. Your car's dependable for the first, 10 years if you take care of it, right? But things start to break down. Right? In science, they call it the nature of entropy, right? The arrow of time, entropy, all these things that I'm not going to go deep into because I'm not a scientist and I don't want to misquote but we understand that these things, this world, this existence, things are undependable and unstable. And so one of the first things as a practitioner, what we have to do we have to start to gradually, slowly immerse ourselves in becoming comfortable with this uncertainty, instability, undependability. And that's hard, but it takes time. We have to courageously, and part of the practice, the Buddha says the patient endurance is the best meditation, right? To endure these things in life, this instability, the undependability, all of these things, and to develop our insight into these things, to really know and understand this reality, that everything is a certain way right now. Tomorrow, It could be different. You don't know. And of course, that naturally brings up a lot of fear in us, right? And so part of dealing with uncertainty is dealing with fear, understanding fear. Why are we fearful, right? Why has this insight, this understanding that there's nothing you can depend on. There's nothing that you can take refuge in that is not going to break apart and fall under you, right? How do we come to acceptance of that instead of fear? Gradually understanding and practicing and reflecting that this is uncertain, right? We don't know. We desperately want, just like when we were young children, and we have this wonderful feeling of safety and security that our parents know everything. And their parents know the best thing to do. Now, some of us had childhoods where we knew from an early age that our parents definitely don't know these things. Some of us had childhoods where, things were stable and dependable. And we had to learn this later on in life when we got older. And we realized that our parents didn't know everything. As a matter of fact, you're up to the point where you realize your parents don't really know much more than you do. We're kind of all stuck in this world. And so we desperately want right now to believe that there are some people in power somewhere that know exactly what to do about this situation and make sure that everything's okay and everything's perfect and everything's safe. No such thing. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. Right? No, especially what's going on right now, it's novel. It means nobody's ever dealt with it before. So we're in an uncertain mode when it comes to dealing with this virus, right? Nobody knows. We have to learn. We have to investigate. We have to understand. And then we can start to develop some kind of a little bit of stability regarding it. And that takes time. So when we're dealing with uncertainty, with instability, we're dealing with our fears, right? Because that's the nature of things. The nature is that they're uncertain and unstable and undependable. Our reaction to that is where our suffering comes in and our anxiety and all of these things. So we can't control. We can maybe manipulate and control to a certain point, but in general, relax, everything's out of control, right? So what we can control is our anxiety, our reaction, our suffering in relation to it. That's the one thing that we have, I wouldn't say complete control over because we haven't developed ourselves yet, but we have a measure of control of what we can do about our reaction, our anxiety, our fear, our suffering, right? So slowly investigating our fear. When fears arise, when anxiety arises, why? What's the root cause? And you can reflect on, is this helping me or is this harming me? Right? Reflecting on how the drawbacks of this. Why should I allow myself to have this suffering, to have this anxiety, to have this fear? What does it do for me? Right? Now, of course, 100,000 years ago, our ancestors, in the wilds, right? The fear and all of these anxiety and all of these things, these are naturally, these have evolved with us. They've kept us alive. That's true. But in more modern times, they can also be a detriment, right? Like the fear and the anger and the anxiety response was only meant to be a temporary thing to keep you alive. It actually degrades the body. It actually physically, scientists have shown that it actually harms the body, right? But if you're living in anxiety and fear and all these things constantly for years, your body is it's like your body is going at 100%, 100 RPM, whatever, 100%, you're driving your body to destruction, right? This is why people have like heart issues and all these things, all of these issues that arise. So you reflect on these things, reflect on that, what is this doing to me? Why is this arising? What is this doing to me? Now, you're not judging yourself. You're not saying, oh, you're a Buddhist practitioner. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be this. You shouldn't be that. Nor are you trying to force that stuff away. You're trying to investigate it and understand it. And the insight that develops slowly over that allows you to let go more, allows you to suffer less, right? And one other aspect to recollect as well is that when you observe your mind, when you see your mind, you start to see that we have an underlying tendency towards thinking about the negative. Why? Right? When our ancestors, we were out in the jungles, the savannah, wherever we were at, we don't need to think about the good things, the positive things, because those aren't going to kill us. We already have them. We don't have to worry about them too much, or we have to worry about them losing them. But really, what we're worried about more is the uncertain, the beast in the darkness, right? The monster in the closet, the monster under the bed. All of these things. That's what we're concerned with. Right. What I found most funny sometimes when I'm by myself in the woods in the darkness, meditating at night up in the platforms or wherever I'm like really trying to face my fears. Oftentimes my mind was more fearful of things like aliens and Bigfoots and things that were like, making up than like the actual beasts that could be in the woods. Right. Because the mind goes off on all these tangents and thinks about all these fears that might arise. And so you observe that and you really see that and you understand, okay, and even if you just have fears about beasts and animals in the woods, as you're out there and you actually start to scare more animals than the animals scare you, you realize, okay, it is possible that I could die here, but most likely everything's going okay. And that's an important thing to understand, right? We have this natural, everything's going to go bad, everything's going to go wrong. But when you really look at it, no, things went actually pretty good. So you reflect on this, that we have this natural tendency to think about the fear, the worry about what the bad things that are going to happen, right? And that actually harms us from enjoying or dealing with the good things that arise, right? We have this natural tendency because of our evolution and our survival and all of that to think about the negative, to worry about everything bad that's going to happen. So when we get into like one of the things that I realized, and this was before I became a Buddhist, I was reflecting on these things and I ended up coming up with like a positive thought mantra. And it was essentially a reflection on myself to remember that, essentially no matter what happens to me today, if I am thinking more positive and not dwelling too much on the negative, even if something bad happens, it will not have ended up as bad of me being positive about it than if I was angry and anxious and fearful and all these things. It ends up way worse. So I can remember I work child protective services and I was in it's always stressful, but sometimes there's periods where it's really crazy. And I'm going for a walk around and I'm reflecting and I remember being told that my boss wanted to see me. Right. And I'm thinking, I'm behind on my paperwork and I hope I did this with this family, right? And all of a sudden fear, everything right. Oh, I don't know, what does my boss want? All these things, like all the negative, just like all the beasts in the woods and the monsters under the beds come, everything arises, all the fear. And I have to stop myself. Okay, take some breaths. You don't know what it's about. It could be a positive thing, right? And so once I kind of reined in that fear and anxiety and things, okay. And then I went to the boss, and actually it was a positive thing. She wanted to commend me on something, right? But I didn't know what it was. It was uncertain. It was fearful, and I automatically thought about all of the things that I was doing wrong, right? All of the bad things. So you reflect on that as well, uncertain times, right? We think we know that right now people are going to die. This is natural. People die a lot. for all variety of reasons. And because we have this pandemic, it puts us, if you were here for my mindfulness of death yesterday, you know where I'm coming from. It puts it right in front, right? And so, but for the people who live through this, there can be lots of positive benefits. We don't want to think about that, or we think that's kind of, what's the word? We think that's kind of a mean or a rude thing to think about while people are dying, right? But for the people who survive through this, there's many things that we can do positively, right? We can reflect on, we understand the benefits of our family and community and living well, all these kind of things. Many positive things can come from even hard things in life, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of those hard things in life train us and teach us, and especially if you view them as a teacher, as something you can grow from and learn from. Even the negative things in life can be turned to a positive light. Right? So things are uncertain. It's true. Right? We are immersed in uncertainty. That's the case. The issue is, what do we do about it? How do we live? Right? That's the issue. That's your choice. Your choice is, how do I live in this world? I have this body, I have this life. The truth is that everything's uncertain. The truth is that we all don't know what's going to happen from minute to minute, from day to day, right? The truth is we are immersed in uncertainty. So what do you do about it? Courageously facing this uncertainty, courageously developing yourself to be a master of riding the waves of uncertainty, right? To be in an uncertain situation, but you don't lose your head. You reflect on the fact that, okay, this could be very negative or it could be positive, right? Like Ajahn Brahm has his famous thing, good, bad, who knows? You don't know, right? One of the things that, going back when I was talking about the bad things that could happen, there's this wonderful Winnie the Pooh little comic thing. And it's like Winnie the Pooh and as a piglet, the little pig, right? And they're walking, and I guess there's a storm or whatever. And Piglet says, well, what if a tree falls on us? And Pooh says, well, what if nothing happens? Right? So that's perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about here. We don't know. We can, and as a matter of fact, if we're anxious and fearful and all these things, and we have this, when a situation does come up that we can help somebody or help ourselves or mitigate some kind of damage, we're useless because we're feel like this and we're so fearful and all these things. We can't do anything about it. This is why people who are like EMTs and doctors and even social workers like me, if you get wrapped up in the fear or even if you get wrapped up in the suffering of others, you're useless to them because you're wrapped up in it with them, right? Like a lifeguard who, like, you have to try to save somebody from drowning and also not get pulled under by them, because that's what happens when somebody's drowning. The person you use the person who's trying to save you as that flotsam to push yourself up. And guess what happens? You both drown, because the person who's trying to save you, who is calm and collected, it drowns, and you're like this and you drown as well. So it's better, even if it's a really bad situation, if you're able to be with that uncertainty and be with that situation in a much more skillful and positive way, it will end up better. Because you were able to do things that you couldn't do. You were able to see choices and see opportunities that you wouldn't have seen if your mind and you're anxious and angry and fearful and all these things. So keep that in mind in this uncertain time. How do you choose? How do you want to train yourself to be immersed in uncertainty? Okay, friends. So let's go to the Q&A here. I'm going to just scroll back on the chat. I noticed there was some typing. I'm just going to check to see if there was anything for me to comment on. Now, if you want, you can also add your questions. Jens, for me, I have found that there is beauty and peace looking at the condition of nature of the world, a stability in embracing the instability. Yeah. Well, that's it. Like you're going for refuge in the fact that there's no refuge. That's when you go for refuge in the Dhamma, you understand that all things are impermanent, unstable, unable to be held onto, unable to be grasped. And that actually leads to you suffering less. When things change, it's the nature of the world. It's never personal. That's actually very good, because we take so many things personal. Like I think I don't know, I always use it, but I used it recently. The example of somebody cuts you off in traffic, and this person doesn't know who you are. They don't know. They've never seen you before. They'll never see you again. But you take it so personal. Like that person woke up that day and said, I'm going to make this person's life a living hell. Where are they? They're going to be driving here. I'm going to cut them off. No, they didn't know. They're in their own mind, dealing with their own stuff, living their own life, and they cut you off. But we took it so personal, right? So that's actually part of anatta, not self. That's part of the development of the practice. You start to take things a lot less personal, and you start to realize the reality of how things are. Very beneficial side effect of the practice. Ajahn difficulty, yes. Ajahn, when I first heard that story, everything was Ajahn. Ajahn, New Jersey driving, right? Ajahn, New York City. whatever was scary or whatever was agitating to me, it became my teacher. That's a very good lesson. Everything. Ajahn COVID-19, right? It's interesting. Suzanne says it's interesting how we have expectations that we don't realize we have until they are not met. Until the water doesn't come on or the car doesn't start, then something happens or doesn't. That's part of what I was saying about we've built this certain degree of certainty in there, right? And we kind of have this now. We have this kind of this childlike belief that our systems will protect us, that everything in place will always be there, right? But that's not the truth. That's not the reality. If you want to know that, you live at Bhavana. You go to Bhavana. When I tell people, guess what? The nearest police or emergency or anything is 40 minutes away. 40 minutes? What happens if this or that? You got to deal with it. Right? So, and I remember that when I first came to Bhavana, I had the experience of being in places like in Vermont where they didn't even collect your garbage. You had to bring your own garbage to this collection area. And I'm like, oh, we have garbage collection at Bhavana? That's pretty good. Right? So we have these expectations. But when you live in a kuti and there's no electricity, actually, I prefer no electricity. It's so nice. I got to put on my nice oil lamp and things like that. So, but when I'm in a place like I'm in a place right now, I'm in modern New Jersey, right? Everything is, electricity works and internet, I have normal internet, right? You go and, you live in Bhavana and, you're lucky to be able to watch a full YouTube video, a Dhamma talk at, the lowest setting without having to buffer every 5 minutes, right? So, if you go out in nature and you get yourself ingratiated, or if you put yourself in experiences where you don't have all of these certainties, then that also helps to develop your ability to patiently endure things that are not certain. Certainty is always an illusion. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a complete illusion. Like, I mean, a new car should work pretty well for a couple of years, right? But we just have to understand that eventually it's not. So it's not necessarily an illusion per se. It's just an understanding that eventually this is going to break. Like there's a Ajahn Chah, if you know who that is, he has this, simile where he talks about this cup. And because somebody asked him, like, why, if you're telling us not to attach, why do you use the same cup, or is it your favorite cup or something like that? And he says that, I can hold on to this cup and I can use it, but I know, he's like, do you see the crack in the cup? I know, it's, to the eye, to the regular eye, it looks like a perfectly fine cup. It's not cracked. It's not broken. The Dhamma eye, though, sees that this cup has a crack in it already. It will break one day. And I know this. So that's what Ajahn Chah is saying. Is like, I know that this will break, that this will end. Right now, it's fine. But eventually it's going to crack. Courageously riding the wave of uncertainty. Yeah, like a surfer or something. Yogatara. A surfer of uncertainty. Eeyore the Mara donkey. Actually, when I was young, I really identified with Eeyore and Oscar the Grouch. For some reason, I identified with all the depressed, negative characters, and I was pretty depressed and negative for at least the first 25 or so years of my life. So I guess that worked out. Aside from mindfulness of death, Green Obino asks, aside from mindfulness of death, are there any other meditation subjects good for uncertainty? Yeah. Perception of impermanence, right? The 10 perceptions, perception of impermanence. We understand, we reflect on the fact that everything that we hold dear as certain and dependable is going to go away. Right? 5 subjects of contemplation is good for that. Like you said, the mindfulness of death, right? Everything that we hold dear, we will be separated from. Perception, reflecting on impermanence, just a basic reflection that everything that we have right now is going to change, right? This robe wasn't this color. As Sister Soma likes to say, "Oh, you're wearing a pink robe now." and in some lights, this robe does look kind of pink, but that wasn't this color when I first got this. This was more like this, right? And I've actually tried to dye this and try to bring it back to its old color, and I'm not a master dyer, so I haven't been really good at it, right? So this robe, the color changed, the color dyed, right? So you can see, everything around you, if you have that perception, everything that you look at, you can see impermanence, or everything you can look at, you can see instability. You kind of like putting on the glasses of anicca, right? If you use that, and you see all opportunities to reflect and understand that things are not stable. Nah, there's not Bavana birds. Those are New Jersey birds. New Jersey suburb birds. Once this thing is, I had plans to go to, actually to come to New Jersey to spend time at Buddhist Insights, and then also head to Temple Forest up in New Hampshire to spend a week there. I had all kinds of wonderful plans to visit monasteries and do all kinds of, self-practice and not teach this year and do all kinds of things. And guess what? Hello, COVID comes in and says, hey, do you remember that whole anicca thing? All of your plans are now gone. Have fun with that. Okay. Bun says, can we cultivate action that can increase our certainty? Increase your certainty in what? That things are uncertain? um, cultivating action, that if you practice Dhamma, you listen to Dhamma, you practice Dhamma, you follow the Noble Eightfold Path, that will naturally develop your ability to become fine with uncertainty. That will naturally make more certain your understanding that everything is uncertain. That's the way it is. Pretty much the answer is the Noble Eightfold Path. If you have a question, the answer is always practice. If you have but the answer to, these kind of things, you follow the Noble Eightfold Path. It's the way leading to the ending of suffering. So, no, Sally, it's a little bit, it's a little bit of a play on words, English words per se. So, when you take refuge, the Buddha says that everything is impermanent. Everything, all conditioned things are what? Unstable. They're anicca. And if you grasp onto those things, they are also what? They're dukkha. They're suffering. So dukkha is our grasping on and expecting things to be something different than what they are. We want something to be permanent, stable, dependable. And when it falls apart and slips through our fingers, we suffer, right? So we understand when the Buddha's teaching is that everything is this anicca, everything is unstable. If we grasp onto it, it causes us our suffering. And everything conditioned is also not self, right? So this is the Buddhist teaching, right? These are the three characteristics of existence, of all conditioned things. Okay? So when we go for refuge in the Buddha, we are going for refuge in the fact that there is no refuge, that nothing is permanent, nothing is stable, nothing is dependable, at least in the long term. So that's what I mean by that's the irony of going for refuge, when the refuge is that there is no refuge. That's what that means. Make plans and God laughs. No, I guess the specific thing would be wrong religion, but it's completely accurate to reality. That is at least my experience, right? Like how many times I'm like, this is why I always tell people I don't know if I'm going to be a monk for the rest of my life. I mean, I have kind of an intuition that I will, that this is the best thing I've ever done, for me and for others. But this is, I don't know. Everything's uncertain, right? There could be something that comes up that causes me to say, okay, I'm done being a monk, right? And you don't know. And so one of the reasons I also say this is because I don't know, right? Every time in life that I have had this certainty of I know exactly what I'm going to do and all these things, right? Life laughs and says, "Oh, really?" and throws a curveball, right? Like for instance, like I mean, I didn't know that I was gonna, find somebody I was gonna marry like months out of coming out of college, right? And go through that process. I didn't know that when I became a meditator that I was gonna become a Buddhist monk. That I didn't know these things. I didn't know I was gonna become a Buddhist at that point when I became a meditator. It's just things that happen, things that, this is the uncertainty in life. You don't know. So this is just the way it is. And you kind of have the choice, or, you have the choice to allow yourself to be incapacitated by that uncertainty or to ride the waves of that uncertainty, right? You have the choice. Now, of course, like I always, it's a practice. It's something that takes a long time. It's not something that you just snap and you're like, okay, I'm this way now. No, you practice. It takes time. Yenny, knowing that everything is uncertain, how to keep us motivated to compete as a layperson? Motivated to compete. Competition is not necessarily a bad thing. It's like many things. It's kind of a tool that can be used for good or for bad. As a layperson, if you have a family, you have to, support yourself, and you have to support your family, and all of these kind of things. You have to, you have a job or a career or something, and that there's involves some kind of a competition in that. You just what I would say is, as long as you do this with good intentions, and try to act skillfully, you're following the Noble Eightfold Path, right? This is right livelihood is part of that. Acting skillfully, and being, following the path, and all these kind of things, then it's okay. But it's you have to, if you have chosen that you have a family and you have to support yourself and people, then this is, part of the motivation. Now, I mean, if you've totally let go of all that, then maybe you want to, look towards becoming a monk. But otherwise, but even that's still in the monastic life too. Even if you don't want it to be, it's all that stuff is still in the monastic life. It's just the way it is, right? We think people come to the monastic life with all kinds of certainties. It's going to be this and that, and I'm going to let go of all my baggage and defilements when I go to the monastery. No, that doesn't happen. That's just the way it is. What time are we at here? Okay, so we still got about 10 minutes. So if there's any further questions or comments or clarifications, we can go through that, or we can end early. It's one way or the other. Sally, thank you, Bhante. I have the habits that Bhante taught about, attractive to negative. We all do. It's not just you, Sally. That's part of our, it's part of being human. Bhante gives some practical tips, tools to think in positive way in daily life. Just like I was saying before, what I tend to do is, there's that voice in your head, the negative voice, right? What I've developed the ability to do is I actually counteract that with the opposite. Like, oh, this is going to be horrible. Maybe not. Right. So like every time, like, your mind is moving towards that, see if you can counteract it. See if you can say, well, this might not be the case. It could end up this way. So like that kind of is giving you at least the ability to, at least it gives you the ability to have some time to reflect on if you actually want to go that negative route. Like, well, it could be this way. And then that will actually like kind of lessen the power of that negative thought. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will totally go away, but it will lessen its power. Right. So like questioning that's what, as a meditator, as a practitioner, you question everything, right? Even your own thoughts. Right, not to the point where you like make yourself crazy, but if it's negative, oh, it's going to be so bad. It's going to be, is it? Do you really know? Right. And you reflect on, you can even think about, well, all of these things, you think about how all of this stuff can happen, but you don't know. Right. So to assume that it's going to be negative is not really beneficial. It's not really helpful for you. It can hurt. So you reflect on these things. Yeah, Chris, that's the great thing. I was watching there's this interesting series on Coursera called Buddhism and Modern Psychology by Professor Wright, who put out the book Why Buddhism is True. And so he takes like this interesting, it's a free course on Coursera. I highly suggest anybody to see it, to use it. And he says in there, where is it? Now I lost. Our brains evolved to survive, not to be happy. And that's what he says, isn't it? He says, our brains, the evolution did not evolve us to be happy. We're not, as a matter of fact, if we were happy, then we wouldn't live. We wouldn't survive. Like if we only got to eat once and we were happy forever, we'd die. Or if we only reproduce once, we were happy forever. It's okay. You're like, so like our brains like kind of like evolved to be that like always searching for the best thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the best thing, right? And that has led us to survive, to modern times, but it hasn't led us to be necessarily happy. Mamet says, thank you, Bhante. Why do we take the principles of karma as certain and permanent? I don't necessarily know that we do. Your karma is your action, right? So I guess what you're talking about is your vipaka, which is your results. And so there's no guarantee that you actually, in Buddhism, that you have the results of all of your actions, right? When you become awakened, there's many karmic actions that you've completed, that you've done, that when you've cut off the cycle of samsara, you don't have to deal with them anymore. So they're not necessary. So, even those are it's not like certain and permanent that you will have to suffer every single thing that you've ever done. And you don't know from lifetime to lifetime what the next life, time is. It's not linear. So you don't know what you did this life will actually have much of an impact in the next life. So that's all uncertain. Suzanne, I see my attachment to certainty and wanting to see it as always an illusion. I see my attachment to certainty and wanting to see it as always an illusion. Well, I mean, if seeing it as an illusion is a useful tool that helps you to not get attached to it, it's not, there's worse ways of seeing things. I don't know if it's technically true, but it could be a useful tool. Chris, mindfulness allows us to watch the thoughts without latching on to them. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's part of not self is, when you start to realize, and it's a bit of a weird realization at first, but when you start to realize that your thoughts aren't you, like you don't have to identify with the thoughts. Like if a thought arises or an impulse arises, you don't have to follow it. You actually have the power to not follow it. That's a big insight. That's a big step in the path. That's not like becoming fully understanding that of not self. Not self is a gradual practice. It's a gradual unveiling. It's not like 1 second, like I have this permanent self and all these, and then the next second, oh, no self. No, it's something that slowly, gradually unveils as you practice. Sally asks, are triple gems impermanent and conditioned? 2 of them are. 2 of them. The first one, the Buddha, is impermanent. I wouldn't say he's conditioned. Once you become awakened, you're kind of, or at least while he was alive in that body, he still had to suffer from old age. He still had karma that had to come and, all kinds of things. So he was still conditioned while he was in his last body. Once parinibbana, you can't say anything about conditioned. But he was impermanent, right? He was here for a time. Now he's gone. However many years in the future, when the Dhamma has been forgotten, there'll be another Buddha who will be here for a time. Then they'll be gone. And the teaching will disappear over time, just like this Buddha's teaching will disappear over time. And the Sangha, of course, is also, just like the Buddha, impermanent. The beings who have followed the path, and they're conditioned while they're in their last body. The Dhamma, however, is not. The Dhamma is always there. The Dhamma is not conditioned. Now, it might be impermanent in the sense that people forget about it, but Buddha says it's still always there. All right, friends. I think we're good. Okay, friends, until next time, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. Practice well and be well. Do your best to develop the ability to surf the waves of uncertainty, and always keep those reflections on that you don't know if it's going to be good or bad. You don't, and even though your mind goes towards the negative, you can counteract that. You can develop the ability to be courageous, strong, and standing strong and certain, or not certain, I shouldn't say that word, standing strong and understanding and developing and living with this uncertainty. Good day, friends.